What's up, everybody? Thralls Miller here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have an album review for you, and probably one of the most anticipated ones that came out this week. We are going to go over the latest offering from Job for a Cowboy, Moon Healer. This comes out on the 23rd of February on Metal Blade Records. This band formed in 2003 in Glendale, Arizona. This is their fifth full-length and first one in 10 years. Yes, it was 10 years ago that Sun Eater graced our presence and actually became one of the band's most, lauded albums.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a fan of this band for a while, pretty much, even though I picked up on Job for a Cowboy in their very early days. Genesis is when Job for a Cowboy came alive for me. And then Sun Eater came out and just blew my mind, just because that record is musical perfection almost.
And playing off that, this band has a very interesting history. They pretty much exploded in the mid-2000s. They were labeled the MySpace deathcore band. Everyone probably remembers the whole Job for a SpongeBob video. Yeah, and that took off. They became known, and they became hated because they used MySpace to promote their music. And years later, everyone is using the internet to promote their music.
Yep.
It's weird, right? It's almost like they were right.
Sure.
Now, initially, this band did start off as a deathcore band. Be completely honest, Doom is definitely a deathcore EP, but it wasn't long after that Genesis dropped, and they kind of dropped all the deathcore and became a death metal act. Now, over the years, this band has had a lot of lineup shifts, but the one main guy that is behind it all is John Davey, and he is still there. And honestly, with this album, I was surprised to see most of the lineup from Sun Eater had returned, minus one member. Danny Walker is not doing drums on this one, but in his place, we have one Naveen Koperweis. I'm not entirely sure how to say your name, but fantastic drummer. You probably all know him from Entheos, and he's done session work with Machine Head,
Animals as Leaders,
a ton of bands, because he's not even just a good drummer. He's also an awesome musician across the board, and an awesome producer.
And a really nice guy. I've met him twice.
So when I saw tracks were starting to come out for this, and I saw the album title, I was like, all right, thematically, this feels like it's going to match up to Sun Eater, a continuation. And in a way it is, at least in terms of some interviews I saw that does have some themes, but told from different perspectives. And, well, musically, this is essentially Sun Eater Part 2, but it's different in a way, but it's, again, very similar. Either way, if you have any preconceived notions about Job for a Cowboy being remotely deathcore, well, I mean, that's been long dismissed. You need to catch up.
Yeah, that dream is dead.
But
sure.
In terms of them becoming a full-on, progressive technical death metal act, I mean, it's been going for a while, but man, it is super cemented here.
Yeah, they really honed in on where they were going from Sun Eater and just stuck with it and rolled with it. And the music work on this album is top notch. And we're going to get into that and probably reference that a lot, but I'm not lying when I say that they definitely practiced since Sun Eater and didn't let go of any of what they were doing.
No, I think over this time, they had time to fine-tune this. In fact, I would say this probably would have been released sooner if it weren't for the pandemic.
Yeah.
But even that time, during the pandemic, they had, that time to really fine-tune these songs. And in terms of just technical and wild writing, this album is absolutely crazy, but in a really good way, because the whole thing kind of flows really well. There's a liquidity to it, which is very odd, because there's lots of heavy, chunky riffs. John Davies' vocals are absolutely feral at times, and he's got great vocal dynamics. But in terms of how this thing flows, it's very, I don't know, again, just kind of fluid. And a lot of that is, once again, due in part to the bass work. Nick's bass work on Sun Eater was fantastic. His work in, Seville Carnage is amazing too.
Right.
But his sort of background melodies and that fretless play on there,
oh my God,
it allows these songs to flow around, and it also allows the guitars to pretty much play every style imaginable by metalheads. If you're a music theory nerd,
yep.
you're probably going to love a lot of this, in terms of just the lavish playing, the atmosphere, the different riff styles. It's nuts.
Tons of angular melodic riffs all the time, nonstop pretty much. right from the get-go. Beyond the Chemical Doorway, the first song opens up with an ambient, brooding, dissonant, dark melody, and then gets right into this straight-up chunky groove, but like, just the way all the transitions work, it's just like, again, very liquidic, very just simple flowing, almost like you don't notice the changes happening, but then you just find yourself in the middle of a groove.
Yeah, for every like aggressive riff pattern, there seems to be like a tag at the end that kind of just slithers through the song. And you get a lot of these like cool dissonant melodies. In fact, like the opening of that has some almost like Middle Eastern vibes. But it lays into these like sick grooves and these like heavy pummeling riffs. And of course, on top of that, you have John Davey just ranting and growling and just sounding feral as hell. His changes in terms of like, you know, pitch and such are awesome, but his cadences I think are amazing, and they work really well with the rhythms on this album, which, yeah, the rhythms on this album are complex and constantly churning and moving around. There's lots of stuttered kick drums and off-time grooves, blasts. Naveen's awesome.
I mean, if you've seen Naveen play really in anything he's ever touched on, he's always got something crazy going on. Like, always. There's always some sort of polyrhythm or awesome cymbal work, and like just the way he glides around that kit anyway is really cool. I'm a big Danny Walker fan as far as his drumming style is concerned, and the man's a human metronome, and his polyrhythms are just on point. And there's polyrhythms all over here. Etched in Oblivion, Grinding the Wheels of a Phantom, the Crystalline Crypts. I mean, there's tons of them. So, like, at first I was kind of set back on the fact that it wasn't Danny Walker, but Naveen holds his own.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they all hold their own.
I mean, his resume is impressive. You can tell it's a different drummer, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, you know, he's putting accents in different spots. His cymbal work in particular, I think, is awesome, especially on The Sun Gave Me Ashes, So I Sought Out the Moon. There's some just crazy hi-hat work in there. And there is just a solid groove to this, no matter like what polyrhythm there is. Like, there's just like kind of a head bobbing sort of vibe to this that allows this album to kind of like flow a little bit. Danny Walker had a little bit more of that jazzy sort of like style. Like, I mean, if you follow Intronaut at all, you kind of know what he does. But this one I feel is a little bit straightforward in terms of some of the grooves, but at the same time they are very intricate because everything on this album is intricate.
Yep. And something else I just wanted to comment on too, as far as John Davey is concerned, John Davey actually personally has always been one of my favorite death metal vocalists, especially as they moved more into death metal. His low growls with the vocal cadences he uses and the clarity in which he speaks, like, it just, to me, it's always been something. Like, I've always just had a kind of a passion for John Davey's low growls.
Now, with their proggy shift came a lot of atmosphere. I mean, you know, Sun Eater is also very lush. This one definitely plays on that a little bit more. It's very haunting at times. Sometimes it's just kind of hard to really grasp the vibe. Like, it's, I don't know, like kind of like Rivers of Nile, except it's like where the DMT knows my name rather than the owls. Because there's a lot of stuff about hallucinogenics on here, and, you know, their effects and, you know, what it kind of does to the mind. But the music matches up with that, like that constantly shifting vibe. It's like watching the walls melt, albeit very aggressively. Whether it's the haunting intro melodies you get on songs like Beyond the Chemical Doorway, A Sorrow-Filled Moon, or the last track, the absolute banger of a closer, The Forever Rot, or it's just these little pauses, because while this album is very busy, it's just constantly going with twisting riffs and atmosphere and absolutely just sexy bass lines. I'm going to go ahead and say
Dude,
it. Like,
for real.
They really are. But there's also these little pauses where they kind of just take the time to catch their breath, because this is very busy. And at under 40 minutes, just under, it's a very dense listen, because everything is just coming at you from every conceivable, you know, direction. Like, you know, you have solos that just kind of come out of nowhere. Sometimes they work their way right out of like a lead melody pattern or just a harmony on here, which the harmonies on here are absolutely nuts. Like, they are harmonizing these twisting, dissonant melodies all the time on here, and they can shift into like just absolutely savage, brutal moments like, again, The Sun Gave Me Ashes, So I Saw Out the Moon, or the Agony Seeping Storm, which that's a horrible storm. Notably more fast and aggressive, like there's a lot more blast beats on there, but again, you have these interesting transitional moments all over the place. I feel like a lot of this, like they kind of like plucked out different things from different music theory books and kind of just made it work. Because honestly, like it's not very jarring. Like for the most part, this really flows very smoothly. Each track goes into one another well. But at the second it feels like it's getting to be too much, they know how to transition into something with like good melodic hooks. Like Etched in Oblivion is flat out catchy. There are great melodic hooks on there. At the end of Grinding the Wheels of a Phantom, or a Phantom, I don't know what that is. Is that a drug? I don't know. Whatever. At the end of that, there were some really good, like, melodic death metal tremolos on there. Like, you know, kind of, like, they plucked a moment out of, like, Hypocrisy's playbook just for a second and wove it into their sound overall. But the thing is, all this sounds like Job for a Cowboy with just, again, different influences plucked from different camps.
And as their sound has progressed over the years, mainly from Sun Eater on here, since we've gone a lot more prog, we're easily reaching into the cynic and atheist camps, like easily, and it's all over the place. Most of the lead work I would call straight up jazz fusion. I mean, there are some like shreddy techie moments, but like mostly, again, everything just kind of flows. And we've kind of talked a little bit about this band and their instrumental breaks. And a lot of times the instrumental break here doesn't necessarily lead into something like a breakdown. Although there are breakdowns on this album all over the place, sometimes when it leads into a musical break, it becomes very spacey. A good example of that is towards the end of The Agony Seeping Storm. There's this really cool bass and drum groove that they cut to that actually kind of breaks up the chaos of that song and just makes it a little jammy. Like it's really syncopated, and the bass is almost staccato on top of this drum groove. It's funky as hell.
It's funky.
It's really sweet.
You will move your ass, if only for a second, just to that part.
Yep.
I don't know. It's an interesting break and a transition into, again, like what they're doing. But it's that constantly shifting style. Like, you brought up, like, you know, jazz fusion. There's also, like, neoclassical play on here, too, for damn sure.
Like, the beginning of The Agony Seeping Storm has a really cool neoclassic melody that they end up harmonizing. And then it ascends and descends and, like, crazy shit.
Yeah, even on the song Into the Crystalline Crypts, there is a long instrumental lead-in that is just absolutely lavish with cool proggy transitions, great lead work, great harmonies. The riff work is absolutely mind-blowing on there. A lot of this, like, you could just say, like, everyone is just put on a clinic.
Yeah.
You know, it's that level of talent in terms of, like, them being able to play their instruments exceedingly well. But I love this setup here. It's, again, like, a little bit more rooted in, like, some classic prog metal or, like, jazz fusion prog, like Cynic and Atheist. Once again, like, honestly, it kind of reminded me a little bit of, like, a more straightforward death metal take on Unquestionable Presence, which that is loaded with those just intense harmonies and jazzy shifts, which is pretty much what this album is about. And I think it also makes like a good distinction between tech death and progressive death metal. Like, this is progressively technical. It doesn't scream like your standard tech death where it's just, you know, noodles and wank and, you know, blast beats all the time. This is a constantly shifting and twisting around. You know, you have a lot of stuff that kind of sounds like Black Crown Initiate too, the Faceless, but at the same time there's, like, you know, more of that odd atmosphere. Like, it's not so rigid and, you know, just, you know, unbelievably too polished and too tight, even though the production here is absolutely amazing. It's Jason Sukoff. He's done every album with them since Ruination. But there's like a human element in terms of like the music itself. It doesn't sound so rigid that it's like written by robots.
Well, it's got a constant build to it too. So like they're not necessarily abandoning riffs when they transition. They're abandoning the mode that they were in or the presentation that they were in to give it a different twist, but they still have the same structure.
Yeah, like, this album is loaded with riffs, without a doubt.
Non-stop.
The Forever Rot opens up with, I think, one of the best riffs possibly in their catalog. It just comes in thunderous, and there are moments in here where they don't necessarily tweak with the riffs that much. Like, sometimes it's a good solid breakdown groove with like a little bit of atmosphere on top. But, you know, there's a constant sort of like, all right, we have like a basic idea of a good riff here. What can we do to kind of spice it up? And that works to this album's benefit for the most part. Sometimes it does get to be a bit much. Like, again, this is a very dense listen, and it is constantly busy as hell. And sometimes some of the transitions don't necessarily work as well as they do on other songs.
There's one weird one that both of us picked out. Into the Crystalline Crypts, while I love that song and I really love some of the riff work, there's a point where it stops and it has this little build section, and when it builds, it kind of abruptly stops again and moves into this crazy tempo change. And that's the only point where I can really pick out where it kind of just didn't flow as well.
Yeah, honestly, this album is loaded with crazy transitions, but that was the only one that I picked. I was like, I don't know if that necessarily fits. Like, I don't know, it just kind of comes on very suddenly. And there's a lot of, sections that do come on rather suddenly, but they're set up a little bit well, whether it's like a pause for atmosphere and then, the detonation of a breakdown or a blast beat or John roars something. This one just kind of felt like it was just ramped up a little too quickly. And I will say that sometimes, some of the atmospheric sections do kind of blend together. Like a lot of it is that, just kind of creepy, dissonant, atmosphere that you hear in a lot of atmospheric death metal. But, they're good at transitioning in and out of it. Like, even the sections that did drag a little bit with, some of the more dissonant melodies, at least there's something going on top of it, whether it's, a vocal pattern or a really cool drum pattern. It does break it up just enough, but I did think that there is a little bit much of that. But, well, there's a little bit much of everything on here, if I'm being honest. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, this band went all out. I don't think there's anything held back on here at all as far as like creative playing, songwriting.
Not at all.
Everything's pretty much dimed on every level on here. And for the most part, I think it works. And yeah, dude, I was a little worried, like, it's been 10 years.
Right.
But honestly, if anything, I think they've come close to matching Sun Eater and, I don't know, maybe improving on it in some ways. I don't know. I need more listens with this one because I've had a lot of listens with Sun Eater.
Sure, yeah, me too. Yeah, I've listened to Sun Eater. Actually, it's playing in the background right now. You can't hear it. But, yeah, I've listened to Sun Eater quite a bit, and I really love that record. I need to give it more listens, but it is top-notch. And because of that, I'm going to give it 4.5 stars. Musically, this is insane and done so well. If you liked the guitar playing on Sun Eaters, you're going to love the fuck out of the guitar playing on this record. Great riffing. Again, the constant melody and harmony. The lead work is intense. The bass work. Nick, dude. I mean, like, we've seen you in Cephalic Carnage, and that was awesome. But, man, the bass work on here... I thought it was going to be really hard to top the bass work that's on Sun Eater.
Might have.
But you might have. You might have topped it. Naveen, dude, I've always thought you were a great drummer. Great work in here. Musically, this is just upper echelon. This is virtuoso work. Full of aggressive riffing, super tight, super proggy. If you were a fan of Sun Eater, you're gonna love this. If you like Rivers of Nihil, Rivication, the Zenith Passage, the Faceless, Cynic, Atheist, a myriad of other bands, I would recommend checking this out. But welcome back, Job for a Cowboy. Well done.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a 4, but a really solid one that could definitely grow to a 4.5. This impressed the hell out of me. I mean, I knew with everyone in here, these are accomplished musicians, and if they were going to continue in the direction of Sun Eater, it would have to be something pretty damn special. And I feel like this is like a worthy sequel. Like, this is like, The New Hope followed with Empire Strikes Back. And not that I was worried I was going to get like a Caddyshack versus Caddyshack 2 sort of scenario. Yeah. This is absolutely amazing. Like, I love the weird twisting, churning riffs. Like, it's constantly moving and it's constantly just undulating and reminding you that the atmosphere that this album lurks in is unsettling and dark, and everything isn't exactly what it seems. And I don't know, I just like that vibe. It's technical, but again, in a progressive sense. It doesn't come across as like stiff tech death. It has a weird flow and a vibe to it. Again, not dissimilar to Rivers of Nile. Like, I got, some big vibes of their earlier work too, which, who knows, they might have been inspired by Job for a Cowboy a little bit too. Everything on here is dynamic as hell. Again, sometimes it can feel like a little overstimulating, but at the same time it draws you in with just all the weird nuance playing and the twisting atmosphere, the great production. Yeah, Job for Cowboy fucking knocked it out of the park. Like, this is legit a badass comeback album, and yeah, we've missed you for this last decade.
Yeah, no shit. Welcome home.
But yeah, if you're a big fan of, again, I'd say Cynic, Atheist, Rivers of Nile, God, there's even some moments on there that kind of sound Gorguts-ish too.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you like technical, progressive death metal or atmospheric death metal, or both, yeah, just like bands that really kind of want to put like a weird atmospheric stamp on their music and just get ridiculously creative on the riff work and leads, check this out. Absolutely awesome album. So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also on our channel on the banner in the bottom right-hand corner. But if you're looking for Thralls Metal stuff, you have to go to thrallsmetal.com. We have t-shirts. We have old shirts also that are discounted, provided we have your size. And we also have hats. So if you're looking for any of that stuff, click the link down below.
Tons of stuff going on at Thralls of Metal. You guys know at this moment in time, we're only 28 subscribers shy of 17,000 subs. Crazy. Tons more reviews coming, collection updates, States of Metal, What's John Jamming will make a return here really soon, I promise you. Discography rankings. This Saturday, we're going to be filming the Black Dahlia Murder ranking that we've all been anticipating for a long time. It's finally coming. You're going to see it pretty soon. After that, the Almighty Meshuggah. Just tons of stuff going on. And really, we just keep going because of you guys. We appreciate all of you, to all of our subscribers, to all the people that talk to us, for all our fans for some weird reason. We appreciate you guys. We couldn't do it without you. Thralls of Metal has become such a gigantic part of our lives. I don't really see myself doing really anything else at this point in the game.
Oh, like maybe watching TV or something like that.
Maybe TV, video games.
Yeah. So yeah, nothing horribly interesting. But, you know, if you're from the Midwest, you kind of know that.
Right.
But, no, seriously, thank you guys so much for all the support and everything. Again, tons of stuff coming in the future. So with that, one more big thank you, because you guys are awesome.
Thank you.
And we will catch you later.